Yeah, so growing up in DC since I was like 5 years old, I have always seen protests happen almost every single week about whether it's gun violence or racial equality or climate action. And it's just been in my world of organizing and advocating for elected officials to take real action. And I think that's really has been a major influencer in my life is being in Washington D.C. But as I got older, like I continued to have my parents go out and allow me to go in the forest and just be into one with nature. And I went out and said, "This is insane that people are trying to destroy this and are trying to decimate our entire ecosystem for the for the continuation of a mindset of extraction and pollution." And I continued organizing, and one of the biggest things was me organizing for Jamie for 0 Hour, and that gave me a lot of like really deep insight about how to organize the movements and how to really understand how grassroots movements can take hold in America. Um, Very recently, in March of 2019, I founded 1 Million of Us, which was really out of the work that I had done in DC, working with March for Our Lives and Women's March and all the different movements that I had so much knowledge around. And just in being in DC and seeing that every single day everyone's talking about things and seeing that the same message is being presented at the end of the day is saying, go out and vote, because politicians aren't listening to us in the streets. They're only listening to us if we're going to the ballots and voting our values. And that's what I saw, is that Women's March only work with March for Science for like a couple of ways and a couple of for different campaigns. But I was wondering, how can we build these connections to be even stronger, where all these movements can talk to one another and also build this major movement to vote and actually make sure politicians are seeing us as one united political force, still rallying and championing for different issues, but still centered around the youth vote. And that's really what made 1 Million of Us be a huge influencer for me, is that that's a huge tipping point, is that 1 Million of Us is half of what happened between 2016 and 2018. In 2016, only 10% of young people voted. And in 2018, 21% of young people voted, which is around an increase of 2 million young people. Now, if we have another million young people that are taking to the streets, that's another huge percentage bump that we have. And if we have a movement that's creating a coalition around this, then that's going to create more and more energy for young people to not just feel that their voice isn't being heard, but actually feel that even if their voice isn't heard, they're still a part of this movement. And that even after the ballot box, we're going to organize town halls together, and we're going to do lobby days together, and we're going to work together to make sure that our politicians are actually listening to the issues that pertain to young people most. And that's really the work that 1 Million of Us is doing, is we're creating summits. We're trying to do different events. We're trying to do so many different initiatives to be able to bring young people around voting, and also providing the work that we do for organizations. If an organization organizes an event, we have GOTV resources where if you're under 16, we send you a text message, and on your 18th birthday, you'll get like a notification saying, hey, go out and register to vote. And we have, we're setting up weekly conference calls where if you're in a certain state, we're going to have people walk you through the ballot and walk you through what date is the election, what's the last day to register for it, what website do you go to just to figure out how to vote, because voting is extremely complicated and extremely boring. And that's really the hard part of it, is making it exciting, making it accessible, and making it where people are knowledgeable about going to the ballot, where you can't just say you're going to register to vote and go to the ballot and know none of the candidates on it. We have to educate people around what the candidates stand for and how we're going to support them. And that's one of the things that we're also doing, is setting up town halls in local areas, because the presidential election is very important, but also local elections are important as well. So a lot of our local organizing and local chapter leading is one of the biggest things that 1 Million of Us has, is our chapters at high schools, colleges, and community centers. We did have a lot more, but COVID-19 happened, and we basically had to cancel a lot of our big events that were going to go through the South and go through the North and just travel between chapters. But we still have the chapters. They're still doing a bunch of digital stuff, and they're still just being amazing. There's so many young people. We have 27 chapters, and 3 of them are XQ super schools, where they're going around and teaching young people at other chapters about how to vote. And it's just amazing to see that once you just talk about voting and give that space for making sure that voting is the first priority, it just creates a huge snowball effect where people are excited about learning. They're excited about how can we talk about voting in a way that doesn't seem like it's for older generations and not for young people. And that's really one of the biggest things, is taking our vote back, just making sure that young people don't feel overwhelmed whenever they go to vote.org, or feel overwhelmed whenever they go to a congress.gov. And it's like walking them through and making sure that they have that political literacy. And that's one of the biggest things that we're trying to serve as an organization.
Thank you so much. And so these young people, they live in a town of New Bedford, Massachusetts. It's a Democratic state, but it's a pretty traditional New England town, a little on the conservative side. And not a lot of people of color in leadership positions. So could you speak to us a little bit about why that's important, that they talk with their families about that, Jerome? Would you mind?
Yeah, I don't know specifically about that community, but if that community does have a large person of color population, I think that it's really important to see yourself represented, because it's just the similarity of, if you sit a child in front of the TV for hours and hours and don't say anything to him, if you sit a black child and a white child right next to each other, the black child will feel inferior to the white child just by watching what's around him and being in his surroundings. And I think that once you have a person that looks like you in a position of power like Congress or in any form of government, it is really impactful and powerful to see that. And also it helps to diversify our solutions and diversify how we tackle problems, because Indigenous folks have different approaches to solutions than Black and brown folks and white folks. They have such a deep bench of knowledge that we haven't tapped into yet, is because we haven't given them the opportunity to really advocate for their communities. Yeah, and I think that the biggest thing you can do is have community-wide calls and talk through it and try to figure out how you can organize the community in the way that they see is the best way possible.
Wonderful. And I think we might even have a few on our summit this year that might think about running for office. Have you ever thought about that yourself, Jerome?
Yes.
What do you think about young people running for office?
Yeah, I definitely think that is huge. Like in New York City and other states, like young people need to be at these seats of power. Like we feel like so overwhelmed just opening any website. And I think that has to change, and just the messaging around the government. Like I used to intern for Congressman John Lewis, and it was not conducive for young people. It was like, it wasn't that well in tune with technology. And it was just really old school. And we're like, I was trying to give suggestions on how we can spruce it up, make it more 21st century. And it's like, that's just not the norm. And I think if we have young people in these offices, like AOC, she's basically transformed her entire office. And it's totally different from a lot of other offices. And you won't notice it unless you've been in one office and then been in another office for a long time. You're like, wow, this is completely different. And I think when we have more and more young people in the offices like other countries have, then you're going to have just a revitalization of our government really working for young people. So yeah, that's really important to have young people in office, just to freshen up our government and make it so it's more representative to every demographic.